Welcome to this video in which I'm going to be making this playing card box using TinkerCAD, and this is actually for a project that I'm doing here at the school, making some top trump cards. You can see we've got some cards here, and where they're going to fit perfectly inside this box. Now I need to tell you that these cards have the dimensions of 60 millimeters in width and 100 millimeters in length. So I'm going to be making sure that this little box here is designed to fit these particular cards. Now this is the first model that I made here, so I've got some text on the end here, but it's not that easy for me to get the cards out. So what I've done here is I've developed developed this box a little bit, and the version I'm going to create in this video looks like this. I've got TinkerCAD, and if I right click on the mouse and move the mouse at the same time, I can see there I can view that image. So I've introduced here this idea of having some cutouts for my fingers to be able to take the lid off and get some of the cards out as well. Now what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to deconstruct this particular design, and then the idea is you can then follow that deconstruction in reverse and remake the design. So there's a few things I'm going to highlight here. The first thing is that I'm looking at this in perspective mode, which means that it's giving the idea of foreshortening of the design, which means that as things get further away, they get smaller, which makes it look realistic in 3D. But if I view this from the top, you can see that I can see the internal walls of the box, whereas if I wheel mouse click and then drag this to the side, now obviously I can no longer see the internal edge of this wall. I can see the external edge instead, and if I pull it over to the right, again we see that this internal wall disappears on this side, which again looks very, very realistic in 3D, but when I'm designing it's not very helpful because it's difficult for me to see where this box sits on the grid. So to solve this, I'm going to come to this bottom option over here, which says switch to flat view or orthographic. And if I click on that now, it means that I can see exactly how this box is fitting on the grid. If I now just rotate this into 3D, the impact is it no longer looks realistic in 3D because I'm losing that foreshortening effect. I'm losing that perspective effect where things look smaller as they get further away from us. But in terms of designing or using TinkerCAD, this makes life so much easier. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is now start to kind of pull this design apart. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to come to ungroup. And as soon as I do that, I can see that I have got a hollow tube here, which is cutting out the finger slot. And I've got another hollow block over here, and that has a particular purpose. Now, first of all, when I'm manipulating things in TinkerCAD, I'm always manipulating things in a 2D view, which means I don't want to be moving things in this 3D view because it's difficult for me to control the movement of those shapes. However, if I have a look at this from the top view by clicking on this top cube here, then I can now start to see how this whole arrangement is working. And if I click on my box here and mouse over one of these handles in the corner, it shows that this is, let's try and keep it up there, 65 in width by 105 in width. Now if you remember when I showed you the original or the final product here, I said that these cards here are 60 in width and 100 in length. So I'm working with a wall thickness here of 2 millimeters. So 60 width plus the left wall, that's plus 2, plus the right wall plus another 2 makes 64. And then I'm also giving a little bit of movement in there. There's like a 1 millimeter gap, so that card just moves slightly inside the box there, and then it's not going to be a tight fit. So that's given me 60 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 millimeter gap, 65 millimeters in width. And I'm also adding on that 5 millimeters onto the length, so it's going to be 105 in length. So if I come back to here and again mouse over the top right corner there, I can see I've got 165 in width and 105 in length. Now if that is 105 in length, I want to make it so that this finger cutout here, I'm going to right click and rotate here, this finger cutout is exactly in the middle of this box. And in order to be able to achieve that, let's just spin this around here. Okay, in order to be able to achieve that, I made sure that the center of this this cylindrical cutout is in the center, vertical center of the box. So this is 105 in height. So what do you think the length? Well, I'm using, first of all, this rectangle here to define the center point. So I've set this to have a particular length, and you may have just seen it appear just then. What do you think it should be? Okay, well, if I mouse over this, well, it wants to be half of 105, which is going to be 52.5. And it would be a good idea at this point as well to make sure that your snap lock settings are set to 0.5 millimeter when you create this rectangular cutout. Okay, the width here doesn't matter, and you'll also notice as well if I zoom in on this and then middle mouse click or wheel mouse click and move across, I've actually got this on the grid and away from the box, but it is aligned here at the bottom to the box. So it's giving me a reference here that's 52.5 millimeters away from the base edge of this box. Now, if I now spin this into 3D and then click on this right view in the cube in the top left corner, I can now see that I've placed this circle, this cylindrical cutout, exactly where the corner of this box is. Now, I'm actually going to delete this for a second and bring it back in again, because you'll see what's going to happen here. If I drop this cylinder in, you'll notice that if I try to get it in the right place, it kind of flies off into the wilderness and disappears. What you need to do with this is actually place this, first of all, on this bright red rectangle, which is the end of the box. If I now right click this and bring it into 3D view, you can see that's the end of the box. Now I've done that, if I go back into this right view and select this, I'm now able to, he says pull this into position. Now actually this is interesting, because now it's not letting me pull it into position. Well, I can lift that up like that, and I can now pull it across and I can drop it in there. Let's just zoom in on this. Let's middle click and move across. Yeah, I can now position that because I've got my 0.5 millimeter grid into the right position, and that is correct. Interestingly, if I just pull that across to the side, let's just bring it across to the side there, and I now bring in another cylinder and I drop it here and I keep it in this view, then I've actually got more freedom to move it around in this view, but I don't necessarily have any reference points to center that. Although as soon as I stop clicking and dragging, I see the center point there of this circle is exactly in the right place. Now, I'm personally not going to change the size of this. If you wanted to make this so it was going to be an ellipse or maybe a different dimension, you could do, but I felt in this example that 20 by 20 millimeters or having a diameter of 20 millimeters was about right for my finger to be able to get into the box and take the lid off and access the cards. Okay, now let's just click off this and go back into 3D by right clicking and see what I've got. Okay, so I've got my two cylinders there on the side of the box. This is the wrong one because it's not in the center. This is the correct one. So all I need to now do is make sure that's going to cut all the way through. So with this selected, what I should be able to do here is, now I want to take it all the way across. And you see when I'm doing that, I'm losing my precision. So let's undo again. And let's now have a look from the top. And that changes things quite a lot, because if I now click on this, what I should be able to do is drag it across, yes, and you'll notice there that if I go out of alignment, my dimension line tells me I'm off. So I'm going to take that all the way over there. Now actually, do I even need to? Can I just click and drag on there? Oh, I can take that across. Now I've got to be careful there because I just moved it slightly off. Got to make sure that I keep that on 200. I'm going to take that across to there as well. Again, making sure that it's got the right diameter to the circle, to the cylinder, and the length there is not too important as long as it cuts into both walls. And if I now spin it around and have a look from this right view again, I can see here that that is going to be aligning again to this guideline block. I don't want that one. I'm going to delete it. Okay, and that now means, of course, that when I group these together, I'm going to get this cut out. And that block disappears because it's not cutting into anything. Okay, right, so that's basically putting this little cutout in here. I'm actually going to go even further back here. I'm going to delete those two elements. I'm going to go further back again. I'm going to take this shape. I'm going to ungroup that, and let's see what I have got right now. So in this particular case, I've got my text. So let's come into the front view here. let's zoom in, let's grab that text, let's take it to the side, and again, in this case it's not going up and down, which is nice. I'm just locking it there. If it does go up and down, you can just make sure you keep it level. And if I just have a look at some of the details about this text here, I've tried to make sure here that the size of the text basically is appropriate for my size of my box, and I've also made sure that that has, if I look at this from above and then just middle click and drag across here, let's have a see, zoom back in on this, here we go, that this has an extrusion height or depth here, should I say, of 2 millimeters. Okay, and I've made sure that when I've brought this across into my design, that it's going to be only cutting in 1 millimeter, and the 2nd millimeter of extrusion depth here is actually coming out of the design. So in this particular case, I could have put my snap to grid here to 1 millimeter. That would have been absolutely fine. So that's my text there, and I will let you kind of play around with that and get it to the right size and choose the right fonts that you want to work with. Okay, well, let's get rid of that text. Let's go back another stage again. I'm going to select my box here, ungroup it again, and let's have now have a look at what we have. So now I'm going to look at the front view here. Okay, I can't see it, so let's go back into 3D. In fact, let's go into the top view. That's a good idea. Okay, middle click, move across, zoom in. Okay, so I'm going to grab this. Oh, can I grab it? Okay, I want to make sure that stays on the grid there. Can I grab that shape? Ah, there we are. I wasn't grabbing the right thing. I'm going to pull this shape across here. Now notice that I'm going to keep this aligned vertically to where it was, pull it across to the side there. And now if I have a look at this from the right-hand edge, so let's just spin this around and see what I've got. I can see that this is representing the lid of my box, which is going to be, if I click on this, which is going to be, let's have a see, 3 millimeters in height, and the length of this is going to be 103. Now, can you work out why it's going to be 103? Okay, well, hopefully you realize there that this box is 105 in length, and I want to have a little indent here where this lid is going to sit in. So my wall thickness is 2 millimeters, so I'm going to have the wall thickness where the lid sits as being 1 millimeter. So 105 minus 1 is 105 minus 2, which is 103. So let's come back to my design here. That has a length of 103, and hopefully you can work out as well now that the width of this is going to be 65 minus 2, which of course is 63. So this represents the lid of my box, and you'll notice here that with that lid removed, I've just got a box with no indent where my lid is going to be sitting. Okay, so by creating this thin whole rectangle or cutout rectangle, I can now come to the top view. I can now drag this in, make sure that I've got a nice even 1 millimeter margin that's going to cut into the box, and then when I group that together, it's going to create, whoops, wrong thing, group please, select them both and group. It's going to make this indent. Okay, so let's ungroup that, take it one more level down. I'm going to delete that lid. Now I've got my hollowed box. If I select this and ungroup it, now in a similar way, I've got a hollow cutout. I'm going to pull that to the side and make sure that I'm keeping to the grid and everything's aligned there. And I've got my red rectangular cuboid, and looking at the dimensions of this rectangular cuboid here, let's look at it from above. This is going to be my desired dimensions. Just try and control my zoom here. 65 by 105, and this wants to be of those dimensions minus, what was the wall thickness again? Minus 2 millimeters per wall. So it's going to be minus 2 at the bottom, minus 2 on the right, minus 2 on the top, minus 2 on the left, which is minus 4 on the original box dimensions, 61 by 101. And finally, if I have a look at this from the front, I can also see that I need to have a 2 millimeter wall thickness in the base of my box as well, which is why the box has a height of 20 millimeters. But what's the height of this one going to be? It's going to be 20 minus 2, which is 18, and it's offset. If I zoom in here, it's offset from the bottom by 2 millimeters, so that it will cut the top of the box open, but it will have the base of the box still solid. So if I just bring this across here, again, as I bring it across, I'm making sure that I've got a nice 2 millimeter margin all the way around the outside. If I come into 3D, select both of those and group it, I've got my box. Okay, so I've gone through the whole process there of deconstructing, should I say, my box. Your challenge is to be able to create this box from scratch. Good luck with that one.